A rebalance is one of the most misunderstood services that a nail tech can provide. When it comes to nail enhancements, anything that's grown out after 21 days, it's no longer a fill, it is a rebalance. The main difference between a fill and a rebalance is that you need to restructure the nail and rebuild the apex again. Most people ask, why don't you just do a soak off and redo the nails again? The main reason why you shouldn't do a soak off every time is because when you prep, you're taking off layers of the nail plate that you can't get back. So you're making the nails weaker and weaker. The proper way is to do either a fill or a rebalance because you're just prepping the new growth, keeping the natural nail intact. Rebalance does take more time and it is more work than a regular fill, but you should also be charging more if you're providing this service to your client. I'm a licensed nail tech of 12 years, and today I'm going to show you how to do a rebalance from beginning to end. I'm going to explain all the bits, I'm going to explain all the implements, and I'm going to explain the technique to getting a perfect rebalance every time. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is
The
supplies.
supply list can be broken down into three sections: bits, products, and implements. I'll go over every section in detail throughout the video. You can take a screenshot now for future reference or download the file in the description. Like I said in the beginning of the video, a rebalance is more than a fill. Since it's been over 21 days since I applied my nail enhancement, my apex has grown out past my free edge. The apex is the highest and thickest point of the nail extension, and it should be right where the free edge begins because it is the stress point of the nail and it's more likely to break in that area. I have to move my apex a little bit further back and correct the structure to prevent damage to the natural nail. The first thing we have to do is file down the apex all the way down. We're going to use the extra coarse bit to get all that bulk and take off the gel polish. This bit really helps save time because of the grooves and the teeth. It easily cuts through acrylic. I do not recommend this for hard gel, gel builder, soft gel, or gel X. Next, you will be using a cuticle bit just to take off the cuticle stuck on the nail plate and to push the cuticle back. I recommend starting with the blue band. Very few clients will need the red or green band. It is crucial that you remove all the cuticle and dead skin off of the nail plate for good adhesion. Next is the 180 sanding band. You're going to use this to remove lifting and prep the natural nail plate as well. This lifts the layer of keratin so that the product and the nail can actually merge together and create a strong bond. Once you're done with the application, you want to use a fine or extra fine carbide bit to seal the cuticle, smooth out the nail enhancement, and begin finish shaping or finish filing, as some people call it. Sealing the cuticle is important so that moisture doesn't get under the enhancement. Next is the comb bit. You're going to use this bit to file under the nails to remove extra acrylic, or you can use it to seal the cuticle as well if the carbide bit didn't do the job quite like you like it. If you or your client prefer not to use a drill at all, you can always use a 180 file to push back the cuticle, remove the extra cuticle and skin on the nail plate, and prep the nail. You and your client can determine what's best at the moment. Now let's get into the steps that I take on prepping the nail plate. The first thing we're going to do is remove gel polish and debulk the apex. We want a flat surface because it's going to help us work later. Then you're going to push back the cuticle, lift the dead skin off of the nail plate with the cuticle bit. We're going to file off any lifting with the sanding band. Then we're going to remove the cuticle with cuticle nippers. And finally, we're going to remove the dust to make sure that everything adheres well to the nail plate. I'm going to be using my MakarttPro Power 35K portable drill. I highly recommend this drill. It has great torque. Right now, I'm going to put it in the reverse. I'm using my right hand and working on my left hand. And you're going to see that when it's in the reverse position, it's not going to take off any of the nail enhancement. It's not going to debulk anything because I'm going from right to left. Okay. So now I'm going to stop the drill and I'm going to turn it to the forward position so that way when I go from right to left, it'll actually do its job and easily remove the gel polish and debulk the apex at the same time. I want to note that I am very comfortable using my e-file and that I've been using this e-file for over 12 years. And I've also had a lot of practice with an extra coarse bit. So I am comfortable going 35K RPMs. See how easily it cuts through the nail and it's bringing down that apex, making it flat. I also want you to notice that I am not touching the natural nail plate. I am not trying to remove lifting. The only thing I am doing is taking down the bulk of the apex to make it flat so that way I'm able to prep the new growth area without digging into the nail plate and causing rings of fire for you or your client. So, like I said, just mainly focus on debulking the apex and removing the gel polish. You don't even have to get close to the edge because you'll remove the lifting with the sanding band. You want to make sure that it's as flat as possible so that way when you use the cuticle bit and the sanding band, you're able to have a parallel connection to the nail plate. Another thing that you want to make sure you do is stabilize the finger while you're working on yourself or your client. You want to make sure that you use the rest of your fingers or your hand to hold that finger nice and steady so you have full control over the drill. Now I'm just refining the shape because it makes it easier to finish file at the end. I don't want any lumps and I want to minimize unevenness because, like I said, it really makes the finishing filing so much easier at the end. As you can see, the apex is all the way gone, and now I have a nice flat surface that I can continue to work on the new growth without causing any damage to the rest of the nail plate. You see, this area right here is now nice and flat. We're going to take our cuticle pusher next and we're going to push back on the cuticle, making our next step much easier. And this is a very gentle process. You're just trying to disconnect the extra skin that's stuck on the nail plate. If you notice that your client has extremely tough cuticles, then use some cuticle softener to make it easier to push the cuticle back. Now we're going to start with the cuticle bit. You want to do this at 8 RPMs or 8,000 RPMs. And important to note with the diamond bits when working on the cuticles, try to avoid touching the nail plate for rebalance because you're going to use a sanding band afterwards and you don't want to go over it more than you need to. Also, when going from the middle of the cuticle to the right, you want to make sure that it's in the reverse. And then you want to go in the middle and then to the left and make sure it's in the forward motion. You want to do this because it helps prevent hangnails when you go in the correct direction. Going in the opposite direction causes hangnails and can cause an infection later on. So I recommend that you do it the way I'm showing you. Now I'm going to start going from left to right and my drill is now in the forward position. I all I'm doing is removing the extra skin and the extra cuticle on my nail plate. I am avoiding contact with the nail plate. I'm also ensuring that I stay as parallel to the nail as possible. I know it got out of focus a little bit. I do offer one on one classes where I teach this. That information is in the description as well. Now you can clearly see where the cuticle is lifted. I'm going to now go in with the sanding band at about a 4 RPMs or 4,000 RPMs, depending on how your drill shows you what range you're in. I am just lightly tapping the lifting where the little bit of gel polish was left over. There's not much lifting to remove, but you want to be very careful to not touch the nail plate quite just yet. You're just going over whatever has been lifting on the side walls and around where the cuticle area has grown out in the product. You don't want to go over the nail plate too many times. You want to just go over it the one time that you're removing the shine. So as you see, the lifting is coming out here. It's kind of difficult to have these angles when I'm doing it all myself. But you see, I'm just gently tapping where the lifting is, and it's coming off very easily. It is a very delicate process, but making sure that everything is parallel ensures that you don't create rings of fire or go over the nail too many times. Now I am gently tapping on the nail plate and just removing the shine and the extra skin that the cuticle bit left. But notice I'm also avoiding the areas where the cuticle bit actually did come in contact with the nail plate, closer to the cuticle itself and under the cuticle. Now, what I'm doing is just smoothing out the bulk acrylic on my nail. It just makes it easier when you apply the acrylic later. You'll have less dips and less grooves when you apply the new acrylic. Okay, now just watch really closely how I gently go over the nail plate and remove all the shine and all the extra skin off the nail plate. I am barely tapping it. Like, I can't reiterate that enough. I am barely tapping. You can see some of the extra skin still on there as I go over and even out the cuticle area so that way my application is flawless. And now, if you wanted to avoid the E file, all you have to do is take your 180 grit file and push backwards the way I'm showing you here. You still need to be very careful because you can still cause damage to the nail plate. Once you remove all the dust, you are ready to now begin cutting the actual cuticle. Cutting the cuticle is a very delicate process, and you really only want to cut the part that is lifted off the nail plate, only the dead skin. The eponychium, do not touch it. It's easy to go past what the dead skin is, but you really just want to lift what is visibly lifted off the nail plate. Cutting the eponychium will make your client bleed, and it opens your nail and matrix to infections and bacteria getting in, and also can aid in causing contact dermatitis when the products come into contact with the open skin. Another thing to note is that you will be going over it with the cuticle bit as well. So you want to leave a little bit of room in case you come into contact with the skin. It has a little buffer so that way it doesn't start bleeding when you are sealing the cuticle. After we're done nipping off the extra cuticle, what's dead, you want to make sure that you get all the dust and all the residue off the nail plate so it's ready for the application. I use 70% alcohol with a nail brush to make sure that I get everything off. Now we are ready for the application. What we're going to work on here is building the apex over again. Then we're going to work on the cuticle bead, and we're also going to do the sidewall reinforcement. For the application, I'm going to be using my size 12 MakarttPro Kolinsky brush. It's 100% Kolinsky bristles, and for me, it gives me the smoothest applications. I make sure that I'm saturating the brush, and I leave my brush in there to saturate completely so that I can put my nail bonder on there. I'm using Too Cute Nail Bonder, and all the products I'm using, I will link them down in the description. I'm just applying the bonder to the new growth, and I am avoiding contact with the skin and the cuticle. While it dries, I want you to note that I left my proximal nail fold intact. I'm going to be picking up a small bead, so you notice that I drag my brush all the way to the tip of the glass so that there's only a little bit of liquid on there, and then I dip my brush at a 45-degree angle. Now I'm waiting for the bead to get glossy so then I can go ahead and apply it. And I'm applying it right where the product starts. I'm not worried about the cuticle quite yet. I'm just placing it. And what a good rule of thumb is, if the bead is not moving, then it's moldable. I then wipe my brush on a paper towel where there is no acrylic. Then I dip my brush and drag it on the side of the glass again, and I start patting down that bead that I just put down. And I'm really using the belly of the brush to push down and shape the acrylic to where I want it to be. And I really am trying to build the apex right now and strengthen where my free edge begins. And you can tell from the reflection of the light how smooth the acrylic is right now. And all I'm doing is dipping my brush in the monomer, wiping my brush to make sure there's no extra acrylic in there, and then patting it down until it's nice and smooth to the consistency that I like it. And again, at this point, we're just focusing on the apex. Here you can see from the side that it's already starting to build me a nice foundation for my apex. We really want it to be the thickest part of the nail so that if there's stress on the nail, it won't break. Now we're going to move into the cuticle bead. Again, we're going to dip it into the monomer, take out as much liquid as possible, and we're going to get a very small bead. And your liquid to powder ratio will come with practice, and also the size of the bead that you need will also come with practice because everybody's nail beds are different, so you're going to need a different size for everyone. Now, I place it right before the bead. I know it gets a little bit fuzzy here, but it will clear up. And same thing, you want to push the bead upwards towards the cuticle and wait till it stops moving, and that's how you know it's moldable. Now for this section, I'm using the tip of the brush more to kind of make a barrier between my cuticle and the product. Now this is why it's important to leave the proximal nail fold, because it creates the barrier and it prevents infection, and it also prevents contact dermatitis. So see how I'm using the tip of my brush just to clean around the edges of my cuticle to create that small millimeter of space in between the cuticle and the product. And I know it's a lot of information to retain. That's why I made this video so you can watch it over and over. And I also give classes. That information is in the link in the description. Here you can see that the apex is still not quite where we have it. So now we're going to go ahead and start building the side walls. Again, dipping our brush into the monomer, dragging it up the side to take out as much liquid as possible. We're going to grab a small bead, a very small bead, let it polymerize before we apply it right where the free edge begins on the side wall of the nail. And once it glosses over, I'm going to apply it to the side wall again where the free edge begins. Here I am applying it, you can see halfway, and we're going to make that area strong because that's where nails tend to break. And right now, I want to take the opportunity to ask you to subscribe to my channel. I will be putting out more tutorials on different nail enhancements. If there's a specific tutorial that you want to see, please comment below and I'll be more than happy to record that video tutorial for you. And also, I do give one-on-one classes via Zoom. The link is down below if you want to schedule a class with me. And I'm also linking all the products that I use in the description as well. As a matter of fact, if you've made it this far in the tutorial video, please go ahead and put a manicured hand emoji. You'd be doing me the biggest favor. And also, all my social media will be in the description as well, so you can follow me on all social media platforms and stay up to date with all the tutorials that I post. Now we're going to do the sidewall on the other side as well, just to make sure that that apex is even and both sides are nice and strong. And while I'm applying it to the other side wall, I want to point out some of the most common mistakes that I see a lot of nail techs make. Number one is you want to wipe your brush after you place the acrylic bead on the nail itself. And then dip your brush back into the monomer and drain out the liquid and then start patting. Another thing that a lot of nail techs don't do is watch where they wipe. When you wipe your brush, don't wipe it in the same spot over and over. Make sure you go to a clean spot in the paper towel or wherever it is that you're wiping it on, so that way your brush doesn't get clumped up with old acrylic that's drying on the paper towel. You also want to make sure that you're using fresh monomer every time you do a new set. Leaving old acrylic in the monomer is not going to help you apply acrylic correctly. Just those three little things can make a world of difference. Now back to the nails. You see that I put on the acrylic on the other side wall, and now I'm just blending it downward, and you can see that there's a good apex there now from the sidewalls and also on the top. From this point on, I'm just letting the acrylic dry so that way I can begin filing and shaping. Now that I'm happy with my apex and the placement. And I want to note that everybody's apex placement is going to be different because some people have longer or shorter nail beds. So you really want to gauge your apex placement by where the free edge begins. And that should be where your apex is. It should be the thickest part of the nail enhancement. And now we're going to get into the final part, which is filing and shaping. We're going to hand file the side walls. Then we're going to refine the apex with an e-file. Then we are going to hand file the shape. And then we're going to buff the nail nice and smooth. And finally, which is one of the most important steps, we're going to clean the excess acrylic that is underneath the nail, which makes a huge difference. It makes the nail look so much smoother and so much cleaner. Now you can see the apex clearly that is hardened. You don't want to position the file sideways or slanted. You want to position the file straight across, waiting for my camera to focus so you can see it really well. You want the nail to look like it's coming directly out of the sidewall. Now you can see a little gap there, but that's because that's the way my nail grows. The other side as well, you can see there's extra acrylic and it looks like there's a little gap there. But again, that's the way my natural nail is growing under the acrylic. So as you see, I'm not digging into the sidewall. I'm just coming straight out and you see just those little bit of strokes have made a big difference already. I'm using an 80 grit file for this part. An 80 grit file is really good for taking down the bulk when you're shaping the side walls in this process because it's going to do it the quickest. It really doesn't take much once you get the application down pat. And this is literally all you're going to need to do at this point. You're just wanting to remove the acrylic and make sure that the sidewalls line up underneath. Now I'm going to go in with my fine carbide bit. I'm going to go ahead and have it at a 35 RPM. And I'm really going to just focus on this area right here where the apex is. I'm going to start with the sidewall. Notice how I'm holding my file with the pinky on my index finger so that I have stability. And I'm just going around the cuticle in a C-curve motion around the sidewall. And I'm just trying to get that little section to be as smooth as possible. And you want to hold the bit parallel to the acrylic itself. So no digging in and making lines with the tip of the bit. Now, here is where you start to shape the apex. And notice the angle of my bit. I am not digging down into the acrylic. I'm just smoothing it out and I'm holding it parallel to the angle of the apex itself. And I'm going right where it is the thickest so that I can shape it. And it should be shaped almost like an egg. Okay, you want to arch. That is what is going to create the strength and the structure to have a flawless looking nail shape at the end that is strong and that is sturdy. Again, from the side, I'm bringing down the acrylic where it is in the back of the nail. Like this little hump right here needs to go down because the thickest part needs to be right where the free edge begins. You see how quickly the e-file just took it down and now the shape is more where it needs to be. And then on the sidewalls here, I'm always going in a C-curve motion. And now I'm just filing a little bit at the tip so it could be a little bit smoother. But I'm really, really happy with the way this nail came out. A little bit more refining on the sides. That way it's easier for me to hand file the shape that I want at the end. If there's something that you want me to go into detail about, just leave a comment below, or you can book a one-on-one with me. That link is in the description as well. Now that we're almost done with our extra fine carbide bit, we're gonna go in with our 180 grit hand file to finalize the shape. I'm evening out the side walls again, and then I'm gonna hold the file over the nail itself and just file in a downward motion like you see I'm doing right now. This is gonna further sharpen the shape that we're going for, and it's gonna smooth out any bumps or ridges that the file might have left. And you can tell where they are if you pay attention to when I remove my file off the nail. You can see that some places don't have any markings on them. You can still see the smoothness from the carbide bit. So in those areas, you want to go ahead and use the file over it until it has the marks, and that way you know the file has touched every area of the nail. So if you see smoothness, that means you have to go over it with the file until the texture is uniform over the whole entire nail. Then you just want to refine the sides a little bit to make sure they're as pointy or as square as you want them. I really like the apex where it's at right now. Now I'm just checking around the whole nail to make sure I get as much extra acrylic off of it, so that way it's easier for when I go under the nail to remove the acrylic. Also very important that you check every angle of the nail shape itself to make sure that the whole nail is uniform. And if you're not really understanding it right now, that's okay. It took me a while to get. It comes with time. And this is an art. So everybody's technique, although it's very similar, everybody's technique is going to be different, and every client has different hands, so you might have to use different techniques on different clients. And I am very satisfied with how this shape came out. So what I'm doing right here is I am seasoning my buffer so that way I don't cut myself. I had to use a new buffer because I can't find the one that I was using for the rest of my nails, but I probably threw away on accident. So now all I'm doing is smoothing out the texture that I did previously with the file and using the buffer to go around and just make sure everything is nice and smooth for when I do polish. This process does not take long at all, and it shouldn't really alter the shape. It's just going to refine everything, make sure that nothing is sharp. But look at that apex. I'm really happy with the way this apex came out, and it's right where the free edge begins. If you have any comments or questions, again, leave it in the comments. Now, I do have some growth of my natural nail and some acrylic under, so I'm gonna go in with the cone bit, and I'm gonna have it at about 8 RPMs. I'm gonna go in forward and then I'm gonna go in reverse to make sure that I get underneath the nail. Now, you have to be very careful and very gentle because it could alter the shape. You want to make sure you stay parallel and that you don't dig into the side of your nail because you will make the side wall very weak. And this is a fine comb bit as well. You can also use the buffer to remove like the little hanging dust, I call it, under the nail. It can make your nail look kind of wonky, especially after you polish. It would be rough on the bottom, and those things kind of snag and can make your polish lift and start to peel, and it also can cause lifting as well. Don't want lifting because lifting allows moisture to get in between the nail and the enhancement, and that's where it messes up the retention. Sometimes a lot of people, they think it's their prep that they didn't do properly, but a lot of times it's the finishing that they didn't seal correctly, so that way it doesn't allow for moisture to get in between the nail enhancement itself and the nail plate. And that is all I have to say in this video. I know it's kind of long, it's 30 minutes long, but I wanted to make sure that I got as much information in the video as possible. Please check out the description. I have some downloads available there. I have my link to book a one-on-one session with me, the link to every product that I used, and all of my social media links. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe, like, share the video, and turn on your notifications. That way YouTube lets you know when I post more nail content, and I'm gonna have some makeup content as well. So if you're interested in all things beauty, That apex looks so good. I can't get over it. Please subscribe and become part of the Nail MUA community. You are now equipped with the knowledge to do a perfect rebalance. This is Jumalee signing off. Until next time. Thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate each and every one of you.